How's it going, everyone? It's been a minute since I've done a rookie recap review type thing from this last awesome rookie class, and today we're going to do one that I have wanted to do for quite a while, and that is discussing Scoot Henderson's tumultuous rookie years. I think it's probably fair to say it was a bit of a disappointment after being drafted number 2 overall, especially compared to how good of a prospect I thought he was. But I certainly don't want to paint this rookie year as like a disaster or anything, and I think though it may be like a little worse than I had hoped, there's still a ton of good and positive stuff here. So, like, subscribe, comments always would be so appreciated. You guys are all the best. I appreciate you all. But the one thing that Scoot inarguably was awesome last year is a passer. He had really good assist numbers, and it popped on tape that when Scoot gets going downhill and you can use his driving to open up passing lanes, like running this pick and roll with Thibault, wrapping it around this really tight window, threading Thibault in there. He's just very good at picking out open spots in the defense. Like, he's not like a special passer or anything, but he is a very good one, especially for his level of athletic tools. Just kind of reading this little impromptu flare. Both guys, for some reason, go to Thibault. I mean, it is the Spurs. But again, good on Scoot to recognize that and make a play. But he was a really effective pick and roll point guard for a rookie, which is often something that takes time, but that's something that Scoot has right away. He's comfortable threading pocket passes with both hands. We saw him do that righty bounce earlier in the video, or for the first clip, and then he throws in that lefty bounce pass, and he had some pretty nice chemistry with Ayton in this like pick and roll stuff. Part of, I think, the big issue that hopefully is better this year with Klingon is that Ayton doesn't screen. Ayton doesn't set screens. Like, if you watch the Blazers, you know that Ayton doesn't set screens. Like, this is not a screen. He's just kind of, he doesn't materially impact the defender at all. And I think that was a big issue for Scoot. That was kind of out of his control, right? Like, this was a lot better with Wop Reith, which I don't remember if I have an example of that. But point being, like, he's really good at setting up these screens and did not have a good screener. And hopefully, I mean, Donovan Clingan is a much better screener than DeAndre Ayton. So I do think that's going to get better. But Scoot as well here, just really good job patiently reading this weak side defender. Donovan doesn't step up, zips it down to Jabari Walker for an easy dunk. It's nothing like Luka Trey level, but it's really damn good for his age and his role, right? And he became a pretty great lob passer, and Ayton definitely did help him as a lob target. I think Klingon could hopefully be better than that. Again, he draws 2 defenders as a driver because he has such great burst and can get downhill so easily. Draws the help, waits for Poole to back out, and then lobs it over top and trusts his guy to go up and get it. And Ayton is able to do that. That is certainly one thing that Ayton still can do is, get up and catch those kind of contested lob passes and finish just like this. Or some of these might be a little reckless, you could argue, and not the best decision, but I think the vision and decision making here, Scoot sees that Al Horford commits to his shot, right? So he's like, I'm just going to get this over him, trust my guy to win a one-on-one matchup, and he ends up scoring. I think that's savvy, and I think that's good, even if, the placement and all that tactical stuff necessarily isn't perfect. And a lot of his, like, turnovers and like, passing mistakes were very, like, kind of easy fixes to me, just like not reading the nail help here makes a decision without really being aware of where Vassell is on the play, and it was a lot of this, like, and he ends up getting the steal there, a lot of this like miscommunication stuff, not really being on time with his teammate. The Blazers sucked ass last year, especially on offense at times, and it was just like little miscommunications. Like, he thinks Wop Reith is going to spot up here, but Wop is going and just the pass doesn't go to the right spot. Like, I don't really fault that to Scoot, but I think these kind of miscommunications were all over the tape, and some of them were certainly his fault, but the environment wasn't great. And Scoot, of course, would just kind of like run into guys. But again, we see like this spacing is so bad here. Is Banton, I'm not really sure what the idea is here. Running a pick and roll here, maybe they're trying to like set into Spain, and Scoot just doesn't give this time to develop, but then Reith isn't setting a screen really, and I don't know what's going on, right? Point being, I think some of this is Scoot for sure, but a lot of it to me is just the dysfunctionality of the Blazers, which you hope will get better with time, right? Like that's what should happen. Yeah, this playmaking stuff is what we know Scoot is good at. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because I think the much more pressing and interesting stuff is everything else, the scoring, the driving, and notably his footwork, which part of my optimism is that Scoot's footwork was so bad at times, especially early in the season, like this clip where he's just kind of, I don't even know what he's doing. His feet are totally lost. He just flicks the ball up without, trying to bump or be patient at all. And this stuff was a huge problem and really hindered pretty much every aspect of his offensive game, to be perfectly honest. Like, great job here beating Kevin Durant off the dribble, but he relies so heavily on these extension scoop finishes, which are just really hard shots. And Scoot's touch, I think, is good, but it's not special or anything. So he's not making these shots at an extraordinary clip or anything. He was just relying on them because he doesn't necessarily have the footwork capabilities. And this play, I think, is classic. All of the good and bad for Scoot wrapped up in one bundle. We have the shot, which of course was not good last year. He wasn't efficient from anywhere, and I definitely am a little worried about the jumper. I think Scoot, right, similar to other guys I've talked about, even Amen, doesn't need to be an incredible shooter, right? He just needs to not. It just needs to not be able to have defenses back off of him. But even then, Scoot can get low, crazy burst and explosion, burns a switch, but just doesn't really end up finishing this reverse. I think he, again, just seems always constantly pick wrong when it's finishing angles or foot placement and stuff like that. And his handle is good at times and bad at other times, but he does have really nice touch. And I will say that, like I said, sometimes you'll see flashes of the handling like we saw earlier with him rescreening and pick and roll. Other times he'll just totally lose the ball, but hey, he's floating that one in there. Some of the floater touch is quite exciting, which we're going to get into his usage of the floaters here. And it's just, man, I wish Scoot, like I said, I have this complaint with every young ball handler, so I guess that's good enough where I just take one more dribble, get into the restricted area, and draw a foul or dunk the ball. He has the athleticism to do it, and I think that's part of what's, on one hand, frustrating, and on the other hand, encouraging, is that we know Scoot can do it, but he just plays so fast right now, where it's just torches one of the best on-ball defenders in the league, Aaron Gordon, on a switch, and then just kind of rushes his finish attempt. I know he's probably trying to stave off the block, but hop off of 2 feet. Scoot is strong as hell. Obviously, he's not as strong as Aaron Gordon because he's a rookie, but Scoot is really damn strong. And it's just a lot of this early takeoffs, this stuff that is really frustrating because you feel like it shouldn't be happening. But again, I think because of this, there's so much runway to improve. And when you see the flashes when it does work, you can see how good it could look in the future, where yeah, you can't really lazy switch this kind of ghost action. This is going to be a deadly action. And I do think Chauncey is overall not a very good coach, but there were some of these actions I did where they'd ghost Banton hard, get Scoot downhill with the head of steam, and he's just totally unstoppable in that phase. There's already not many point guards in the league who are quicker than Scoot from when he has a head of steam and when he can play. And I think a lot of the burst not looking as good as it can, partly I think that the injuries that have kind of been racking up over his career now, which is an unfortunate thing, but look at how low he can get, turns the corner on Kuminga. The flexibility and bend here are phenomenal. It looks like a running back, and Scoot hangs and finishes. Look what happens when Scoot finishes off of 2. Beautiful. He's more balanced, he's more controlled, he can get higher up, and he can do this. He has the capacity to be an excellent finisher and to be a really hyper efficient driver, especially when you can blow by guys and dunk like that in the half court basically whenever you want. We know Scoot can be so much more explosive and powerful than he is, and I love these little DHO flip type actions that the Blazers would do to get him downhill, and I want to see more of this as long as Scoot isn't a crazy shooting threat. Force the Scoot's defender to play the handoff, pitch it back, and just let him get downhill, and he'll cook from there, right? I think that was an effective way to get Scoot going. And just when you give him space to accelerate and punch the gas, there's not much Lou Dort here. I mean, you zone out for Scoot is so dangerous because guys with his speed, you have to be so perfectly in tuned and set up on ball defense. I'm not saying this the way I want to, but Dort is not in a stance. He's not ready, and he's not gonna recover to Scoot Henderson. As good as Dort is, Scoot is just that level quick when you get him going. So maximizing that elite tool, I think, is gonna be key for him to reach his ceiling. Whether or not it's gonna happen in Portland, who knows? I don't know. I have some worries about their roster building and their coaching and stuff, but I'm at least intrigued to see what they can come up with this year. And some of the progression towards the end of the season, like in March and April, with the finishing stuff was really encouraging for me. Again, they do this ghost type action with Brogdon where you get to switch on to MPJ, and instead of just flicking it up, let's go back to that Pistons clip, I believe it was, right? This was, I think, a November game. Yeah, Bagley still on the Pistons, Killian still on the Pistons, just flicking it up and totally failing to generate any power here. But months later, right, in the same season, Scoot is late stepping around MPJ. He's not just flicking the ball up. He's being patient with his footwork. He's using his stride length, and it works. Look at that against a really damn good team. Scoot was able to produce at times, and I think there are enough flashes to me, like just gorgeous Euro step. When he slows down and plays with his stride length, it can be really hard to stop just because of how explosive, and like he does move like a running back. He just has that running back type movement style that I think is very conducive to elite advantage creation. And this play from late in the season might be my favorite clip in this whole video, where it pertains. Again, the same kind of ghost action that we've seen so many times. He burns Denny off the dribble, creates an advantage, and instead of just like barging to the rim and throwing something up, he hits the brakes. This is a crazy stance to be in. Balanced, goes up, finishes the and one like that. Those are the kind of plays that have me still in on Scoot, right? Long term, when we see him putting together the unbelievable speed and explosion combined with like this crazy good footwork. He loves to do that little like step through pickup move where it's like almost a Euro step, but not really. And he can finish at some crazy tough angles when he does that. But again, notice that defenders are still pretty comfortable just like sitting back and not really pressing up a ton. Like Nikhil can hard slide backwards because he's not super afraid of Scoot shooting at this case, which is for sure going to be an issue. Like I said, I think there are reasons to be optimistic because like the touch is solid. It's always been solid, and he's been better in the past for sure. But yeah, it's got to improve. But this stuff was so good. Like the pick and roll pacing, he's snaking back to the middle, puts Derek White in jail, hangs in the air again when he plays off of 2 feet. Good things happen. Hangs in the air against Al Horford and finishes that shot. This is the good stuff that we want to see from Scoot going forward. And again, the reasons, again, we see snaking here, and this is the kind of stuff that's going to elevate the ceiling too. This mid-range pull-up as a counter. And we can see what happens when defenses can't just go under Scoot. He has the patience and the ability to put defenders in jail, to wait for the right moment to rise into a pull-up. His mechanics are overall quite inconsistent, and that's going to have to improve. But when it works, it looks quite smooth. And his floater touch, like I said, another example of him putting a defender in jail, using that body and incredible physical strength of his to carve out space and hit these little push shots that are an important part of any initiator guard's arsenal, right? That's a big step for so many young guards where they have to develop their game to be more than just like burst to the rim and threes. No, it's intermediate stuff and slowing down. And I think there was a pretty decent amount of that. And yeah, Scoot at times was willing to like shoot off of the catch and when defenses went under, but defenses were generally pretty comfortable leaving Scoot open and not paying too much attention. And I do think, like, again, these kind of ghost actions are not nearly as effective when they can just back up here, right? Obviously, Kamara's not a shooter and nothing else is perfect, but that jumper's going to need to improve. I think that if it can, right, it's going to get scary because I do think the advantage creation is so legit. The play combined with the playmaking that we discussed earlier, yeah, it's just like, you know, very problematic being able to just go under him and negate everything that makes him great. So that's for sure going to be a big swing for him. Defensively, it wasn't great, somewhat predictably. He was as bad as most rookie point guards on terrible teams are. Things like just really not great closeout positioning, pretty constantly allowing defenders to get by him as an off-ball defender, which was, you know, overall one of his big issues. Scoot really just didn't showcase the kind of like awareness or general urgency needed on these closeouts, and his overall like off-ball defense and like ball watching was not great here. Scoot's just kind of gonna stare at Amen Thompson or excuse me, stare at Jabari Smith while his man, Amen Thompson, easily cuts behind. Like, that's just not really acceptable, right? And I do think it's important, right, that the defensive context was not great. Like, he wasn't playing with a really great defensive big or a ton of other defensive talent, but it was just constantly letting guys go by, right? Like, I'm not so sure what's happening here. It looks like they're starting this possession in like a zone-ish type deal, right? Like, it looks like a 2-3-ish shell, but then they seem to switch back to man when Chris Murray kind of juts out to CJ, and then Scoot seems like he should have been covering up Alvarado in the cut. Again, that's a play where I'm not 100% sure that it was Scoot's fault, but the frequency of these miscommunications with him leads me to believe it is, right? Where just zoning out, like controller turning off. And again, a lot of this stuff is common for young players. I'm not like totally freaking out about his defense being unsalvageable, right? He's, I think he reminds me of like rookie Trey or Garland or Sexton, like guys who, might never be incredible defenders, and on the ball, like Scoot would just kind of let guys go by him. You can see the same footwork issues, right? Like, it doesn't really make much sense. His feet are coming really close together. He's not balanced. He's letting guys go by him. But we've seen enough really awful rookie point guard defense seasons turn into solid enough defenders that I'm mostly willing to bet on Scoot, like, figuring this stuff out, because so much of it is, to me, technique and like recognition that's just going to come with time, where it's like, yeah, hang dribble's coming, you should probably get ready to slide and try to cut this drive off, but there's not a reaction. Scoot's slow to turn his hips and ends up giving up an open shot right there. Yeah, so the defense wasn't great, just like not a lot of impact on a play-to-play basis. He's probably one of the worst defenders in the league, not counting the fact that he's a rookie. And again, not something to be so alarmed by, because there were legitimately some solid flashes, and the best thing Scoot has are his ridiculously strong and accurate hands, where he's so good at this like swipe down on drives type steal, where defenders or offensive players would drive into him, they couldn't move him because Scoot is strong as hell, and they end up getting the steal. And when he was, not freaking out and in position and simply playing his zones, Scoot would make plays with his length. He's got that instinct to like make plays on the ball. It's clear when you watch like the kind of steals he can generate with the strong, quick hands, and using those hands to make defenders really uncomfortable, which he was really good at all season. Here he's going to do it against James Harden, who's going in transition. Scoot ends up just tying him up here. I think it ends up being a turnover, but you don't often see like rookie defenders give guys like Harden and stuff problems with their hands and with their just instinct for steals. So I do think that's a good sign and something for Scoot to hopefully tap into in the future. Like, really strong and physical here, competing against Bam in the post, reaches around with his length, gets a steal. Like, these are really nice flashes, just like on the offensive end, but probably a little more extreme, even more extreme, where there is good stuff here. The play-to-play consistency is not great, but again, we see a really nice rotation here. Scoot noticing that his teammate Minaya is on an island against the switch, so he's going to go and disrupt this play and breaks it up. That showcases something to me, like a feel for team defense, a feel for playmaking on the defensive end. And this is a great block. Like, Scoot flashed some secondary rim protection stuff because he is a great athlete, and he's strong, and he's coordinated, and he's balanced. So all of the tools are there to be a good enough defender, like even like navigating screens. And again, when he has a real rim protector at center, like not DeAndre Ayton, kind of just jumping and swiping at the ball, he's going to look better on defense. Like, I am excited for the Klingon pairing in quite a few ways. I think that the screening and just like the high post passing, and of course the defense, are going to be huge for him. But year 2 is going to be big for Scoot. I certainly don't think like I'd be totally out on him unless he was, I guess, worse or like the same as this year. But hopefully he can continue the incremental improvements he made late in the season with regards to his footwork and his pacing, just generally on drives. Because when he is playing slower and more controlled, and you combine that with awesome passing vision and a knack for getting downhill and creating advantages whenever he wants, like, that's a star package. And it's easy to see why he was such a great prospect and such a high pick. And, even if it takes some time, I just don't think it's smart to just totally be out on Scoot after this season. We saw enough good even in a really bad situation overall, right? And these G League Ignite guys just like seem like they take more time to develop for whatever reason. So definitely don't give up on Scoot, but let me know what you think of this. I am excited to see what he does in year 2. Certainly wouldn't shock me to see him being like a pretty solid player. I doubt he takes like a star leap, but maybe, who knows? He's talented enough to plausibly do it, but I think he'll be good. He'll be better this year. I'm confident in saying that. The bar is not very high, but he'll be better.